Keith Bond did not kill himself. Following the publication of that, Mr. Ian McLeod, who I've referred to earlier before, provided a map of all the Agent Orange drums that he buried in the Paratutu area. This is an aerial shot of Paratutu before the neighborhood is built. Dow is already set up. This is the Dow Chemical Company. New Plymouth is farther over here to the east. This is Paratutu Rock, this mountain here. To the side and coming down here, and down over here, you can see some of the earthworks going across here are drains that go out to sea, maybe a city block or so, and there's an outfall out here. I have stories of people seeing this whole coastline full of orange foam from this chemical company. This is where we stashed Hitler's Nazis, Hitler's Jew gassers at the end of World War II, and had them turn Hitler's Jew gas into weed killer. This is my home before it's built. That's a massive trench built inside of a small mound there. That's turned into a massive dump. This dead area and those dead areas and all those lines are where drums of chemicals are buried. This went on to become steel and tube. All these workers became sick, and that's the future tank farm. Underneath the tunnels that go to the ocean, I went down with rolls of chicken wire and bags of concrete and sealed all those shut. Here's the map. This is a New Zealand Vietnam veteran, came back from Vietnam and worked for Dow in New Plymouth and buried these drums at these locations, not knowing it was a future neighborhood. The dark hatch area is what the council will acknowledge is, and when you dig down there's solid drums. This is my home, 58 Merrimack Crescent, and I dug down in the backyard to right here, and sure enough I found massive drums, chemical waste, pallets, electrical conduit, you name it, factory waste. These are Dow executives meeting in New Plymouth. Knew at the time what they were doing. This is a woman in New Plymouth. Oh no, sorry, this is a baby in Vietnam with a second ear and a person's arm in Vietnam with cauliflower rash type sort of thing. And this is the same cauliflower rash and this baby with the second ear's grandmother that lives up the street. This woman's passed away. This is the Dow Chemical Company with the neighborhood now finished. And this is about my home right there, maybe that red roof there. I've been in each one of these buildings underneath the whole complex throughout. While we're at this, I would like to bring about your attention to this point right here. That little thing right there is what's called the containment vessel, and it runs for 120 meters back here. So let's take a break and refer to this containment vessel real quick. These are the CAD files. This is the case against Dow. The CAD files are equally case against Monsanto. Is the right and left arm of the same monster. They're all the same people. Dow and Monsanto were forced to break up due to antitrust laws in the early 70s. So just thinking when you hear Dow, Monsanto, the same thing. Syngenta, all these monsters, the same people. In the case against Dow, on the day Ernest Radislav visited me and left me with a tape describing how 2,4,5-T gas Jews way better than Zyklon B, he left me with Helen Clark's report. She was Minister of Health in 1986 before becoming Prime Minister in 2000. And when she was Prime Minister or Minister of Health in 1986, she participated into a parliamentary report into 2,4,5-T production in New Plymouth. Remember, the rest of the world stopped this in 1972 because it's radioactive weed killer. Nonetheless, in this report, at the back is referred to a containment vessel. This containment vessel is it's stated in this report is 20% water and 71% DME. This containment vessel is what I pressured one Arnost Radislav about in my interrogation of him in the kitchen. Arnost Radislav, when pressed, what would happen if the containment vessel broke, said repeatedly it could not break, blah, blah, blah. It's a long steel tube. Well, I say steel tubes break, and he finally pressed it. He said that would be worse than a nuclear bomb. And I've never heard worse than a nuclear bomb. Have you? Worse than a nuclear bomb in my backyard in New Zealand. When you see Helen Clark on TV or anywhere, or anyone to do with New Zealand, remember this: no detect. She took out all the numbers and all the soil samples across all the neighborhoods and put no detect, ND, no detect. All these numbers are in the Dow, inside the chain link fence. The Prime Minister of New Zealand is suggesting to you, me, and the whole world that air traffic of dioxin airborne stopped at the fence in 1986. She sentenced a lot of people to death by doing that. In my articles covering Parliament deception, the New Zealand Parliament deception, this is one of my heroes, Atama Iti. This is a real Maori activist. On come Waitangi Day, he regularly pulls out a New Zealand flag and a shotgun and proceeds to blow holes in it. I love this guy. This is one of the main documents. This document is central to everything because it is dated in 1965, and it is a fax to Sarnia from New Plymouth and to all these other individuals, specifically V.K. Rowe, head of communications for Dow. In this, they acknowledge that 2378 exists and that it is radiomimetic and that it has this potential for serious systemic injury, meaning if radioactive 2378 TCV, one of it, gets in your body, it is highly likely you're going to be injured in a great many ways. This is one of Dow's documents that never saw the light of day until now. What I acquired during my research was interaction with a quantum physicist named Frances George. Through her, I acquired all the hard science regarding the radiomimetic characteristics of dioxin. We have with us the frequencies, the types, every possible description of dioxin on every scientific level. Description of how the cell is killed. This science is very important because what it establishes is what we call fingerprint birth defects. We know that clubbed foot, cleft palate, no eyes, no brain, and spinal bubbles are indicative of a certain type of toxin or cellular damage at a certain stage of fetal development. They are the smoking gun, the reason you have a birth defect. Or that is not only a birth defect, some people may have a diabetes or a strange cancer develop at a strange time in their life and they have no exposure. These are the cellular damages that take place in. Here is actual chromosomal damage done after exposure to 2378 rays. Frances George is one of the world's most highly respected quantum physicists. Here is a page from this report admitting by the New Zealand government the annual production of 2,4,5-T from 1948, when manufacturing commenced in New Zealand. Many people say, oh, they only used it a couple years or whatever. New Zealand used Agent Orange and worse, Peaklerum, Agent White, Agent Blue, all of them to make dairy pasture for 50 years. But that's not all, folks. I have here from Arnost Radislav his own personal statement. In this personal statement, Arnost Radislav, this is the Czechoslovakian chemist who was gassing Jews before he built Agent Orange in New Plymouth, Arnost Radislav downplays any aspect of 2,4,5-T and reminds us what a wonderful antibiotic it played when it was used in baby powder and toothpaste between 1948 and 54. New Zealand put Agent Orange in their baby powder and toothpaste for 6 years. It's not that long ago when it is a cellular damage that it leaves a multi-generational poison. This is a man who gassed Jews who went on to wipe out all the Maori on the South Island by working for an American chemical company. These people have now set up shop on Maui. One of the common references to my neighborhood where Dow is in New Zealand is the Valley of Death. I came from the Valley of Death. I didn't walk through it. I moved right in, made myself at home, and terrorized the assholes, making it a Valley of Death for 8 years. Now, we really don't need a Valley of Death on Maui. And that's what Monsanto's in the process of making. Here's another interesting item from the New Zealand media. Their Green Party uncovers a government report that says a whopping 5% of New Zealand's lowland rivers, lakes, streams, and beaches are fit for drinking or swimming in. 5% of New Zealand. Don't get any of the rest of it on you. I find it interesting, the United States State Department, should you buy a plane ticket to Vietnam, will make you aware of dioxin poisoning a possibility. They will admit to dioxin being present in the environment in South Vietnam, and it was sprayed there for 7 years via our military. Keep in mind, New Zealand used this for 50 years, and most of it before they even realized what was going on, that it even existed. Here's a this is a very disturbing report, and what this report reveals is what we have known for a long time, and that is something referred to as gender bending. Gender bender chemicals are ones that affect the pituitary gland, endocrine system, pineal gland, and other things to do with sexuality. I bring this up because in a New Zealand newspaper article, it is noted something unique in New Zealand. Find it real quick here. As I mentioned earlier, most of the New Zealand government is women. This New Zealand study shows that most Kiwis, a larger percentage of them, are into same-sex attraction. Here again is Mr. Load of Bullshit Babies in Jars John O'Neill. He finally is sacked 2003. But nonetheless, on the reverse page of the same article is a study that shows New Zealanders are into same-sex attraction more than the general populace in other places of the world. Now, why is that? That's because dioxin plays a role in sex selection. Here's another article. This is from Sarnia, Canada. Sarnia, Canada just happens to be where Paratutu, Dow Paratutu's sister company is. Sarnia, Canada. And now there are twice as many female birds as male ones, though nature normally keeps the balance in sexes. Dioxin interrupts it. Now, it not only interrupts it in changing the sex, where you might have more girls than boys, these girls are more likely to be lesbian. Now, in a rather strange look at the New Zealand populace, you'll find that indeed the entire government, the Supreme Court, the Prime Minister, the policeman that pulls you over, the judge and you go to court are all lesbians. This is a result of dioxin contamination going all the way back to 2,4,5-T in baby powder and toothpaste. So they not only lead the world in cancer, they have altered the gender makeup of their society. This is also more proof that homosexuality is not a learned or something. It is that you are born. Homosexuality is a physical part of your makeup. It's not evil, it's not dirty, it's not make you a bad person. (2004) 310. The New Zealand government finally admits Agent Orange harmed New Zealand soldiers. No mention of New Zealanders. Now, also, the finding of the 1,300 baby parts in jars in Green Lane wound up bringing down the whole hospital. The Maori who found the main guy, Alan Kerr, in charge of all this carving up kids and sticking them in jars, sentenced him to death in retaliation for dousing Keith Bond in gasoline. Matiu Tarawa, my chief, I would like to show you a picture of Matiu Tarawa. This is Chief Matiu Tarawa, Paramount Chief of all Aotearoan tribes. He's the man who saved the life of Dr. Alan Kerr. Dr. Alan Kerr was to be doused in gasoline and set alight in retaliation for the murder of Keith Bond. Dr. Alan Kerr now resides in Gaza. He lives under the gunfire and rain of bullets from U.S.-supplied Israel. Matiu Tarawa said to spare Dr. Alan Kerr's life because of his ability to work on little kids, and that to let such a good amount of talent would to go to waste in retaliation. You can see Dr. Alan Kerr apologize profusely for his involvement in this on Shady Cardiologist's program on Akaku. The end result of our investigation was that 1,300 New Zealand people plus had a second funeral, the heartache a second time. This time, there was a baby in the box. There's the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Helen Clark, currently on the loose of the streets of New York. 2004. The cost of firing Mr. O'Neill for keeping the Dow babies in jars quiet totaled in the millions. We never could get a final figure. Here, this man to keep his mouth shut about the babies in jars. Same picture. $5,300 a week, I believe, yes. And he never had to go to the hospital to go to work. What a strange hospital CEO. The end result of these two reports being publicized on Thursday, September 9, 2004, the New Zealand Herald printed front page news that they were forced to reverse years of lies on 2,4,5-T denial. 2,4,5-T, folks, is Agent Orange. There's no mistake about it. This is the factory in New Plymouth. Friday, September 10. The soil report came out in conjunction with the blood report and dioxinate Vietnam levels. There again, this is Ray Kennedy, one of my allies in the fight against Dow. And this is the factory that supplied New Zealand, illegally supplied the USA with chemical weapons during war to be used illegally against all international conventions. So, this is also very important because what's happened there is happening here. And we need to take into account the type of deception that these chemical companies practice on a regular basis. This is a page from the Dow manual, and these arrows here point out precisely what I'm talking about. The scrub desiccant TD is 4 pounds 2,4,5-T in related isomers, and 4 pounds 2,4-D per gallon as